Hi everyone, welcome back to another planting video where I'm going to be sharing my most important plant tips for beginners. If you're new here, my name is Laura and I post about lifestyle, ethical skincare, and also wellness. So consider subscribing if you'd like. So I've actually been having plants for more than a year and I've had a lot of struggles, and a lot of plants didn't really thrive in my collection, so they didn't make it, but then there were a lot of plants that did thrive and they're still like thriving today, and I'm really proud of that. And all that came with experience. As the months went by, you just learn new things and you get used to just identifying, oh, the soil is dry, this plant needs water, and oh, the soil is still like moist, so this plant doesn't need water yet, and you become good at those things. So my first tip is for anyone who's new to plants, and if you're a beginner, is always make sure that the soil is dry and the color is going to be light brown. So if you sense the soil with your hands and you see if the top few inches of the soil is dry, or if it's the color of it changes to a light brown, then that means that it needs water. And the longer you can wait, you don't want to wait too long, because sometimes the plant could get yellow leaves and then they fall off, and then it'll look bare and then it wouldn't look as luscious. It's important for you to at first, if you're new to watering plants, it's a good idea to set a reminder on your phone to, let's say you just got a plant and the soil is dry, so you water it, and then you set a reminder on your phone to check back on it in 5 days. And then if on the fifth day it's still dark brown or moist and it's not there yet, then you'd like to update the reminder to remind you in 1 to 3 days later. So then it'll be and then you check on the 7th day, and then if it's not there yet, you wait a day and then check the next day to see. But if you're unsure of how often you water your plant, then that's how you'd like to start off. That way you get to know your plant and how quick the soil dries. And this is all also depends on how near or far away the plant is from natural lighting that comes from a window. So the closer it is to the natural lighting, the quicker it's going to dry, and the further away it is from the windows, then the longer it's going to take to dry. You always need to make sure that the soil is dry before you water it to prevent root rot. And if you underwater your plants by a day or a few days, that's okay, because it can still produce new growth and it can still thrive. Whereas if you overwater it and you just notice that the soil is still moist but you water it anyway, it doesn't really need it, it could cause root rot and then the plant is not going to thrive. So a lot of plants need fertilizers. I recommend getting an organic fertilizer, and so there's different types of fertilizers as well. And you have to decide how often you water your plants. It could be monthly or every 3 months or every 6 months. But again, don't overdo the fertilizer, because I did read that it can really damage the roots of a plant if you overdo it, and your plant is not going to thrive. So something that can help you determine whether your plant is dry or not is a soil meter. So soil meters, basically, you could get them at your local plant nurseries or even in online plant shops. And then you just put the soil meter in the soil, and then it tells you whether the soil is dry, moist, or wet, and then you can determine whether to water it that way as well. This makes the process a whole lot easier, because it does, it really helps you when it comes to being on the safe side when watering your plants. But if you've had plants for more than a year, then you're probably going to be used to identifying whether your plant needs water or not, depending on the soil and how dry it looks and also feels as well. So eventually you're not going to need the soil meter, but in the beginning is really helpful to have. I recommend, if you're a beginner, going to a local plant shop and actually looking at the plants and seeing which textures you like, and if you like trailing, or there's a lot of different type of plants that you can choose from, but there are certain plants that are more beginner friendly, like Pothos plants is for beginners, or cordatums, philodendrons, those are also for beginners. And yeah, I mean, there's just a variety of different plants, but if I were to recommend a beginner plant, I would probably recommend Pothos because they're really easy to take care of. Yeah, and like I mentioned earlier, always set reminders. So if you get a new plant, make sure you add it to your reminders, and if it needs water, then water it. And then if you're unsure how many days it's going to need before you water it, then check on it like every first start off with giving it 5 days, and then check on it, and if it needs 1 to 3 more days, give it that much, and then keep checking on it until it you notice that it's dry, and then water it. But yeah, so like another thing is that every plant has a different watering schedule. So just because one plant is going to need to be watered, the other one may not need to be watered that day. So you might need to wait longer for the other plant. And sometimes, depending on the season, the soil may take longer to dry. So if you got a plant and then you figured out, oh, this plant usually needs water in 10 days, that's when it's always dry. And then one day the season changes and you notice that the soil is still moist after the 10 days, and you might want to wait 1 to 3 more days and then check back on it, because it just depends on the season as well. If you get a new plant, it's always important to keep that plant in the same nursery planter that it came in for at least 30 days, because if you don't, then the plant is going to go in shock, and then the leaves are going to start yellowing, they're going to get droopy, and the plant is just adjusting to the environment when you first get it. So it's really important to make sure to keep it in the same planter that it came in, just so that it can feel familiar, and so it can get used to the space and all of that. So, and then after those 30 days or the first month that you have it, and once you see it that it's thriving, then you can, possibly just replant it in a ceramic planter or whichever planter you'd like. But yeah, it's really important. It's actually happened with some plants that I got. I replanted them too soon, and then they went to shock, and they didn't really, the leaves got yellow, and they didn't really make it. So it's important for the plant to stay in the same nursery planter for at least 30 days after you get it. And then, then you can just like replant it. And a tip is, if it has if the plant came in a plastic nursery planter, then you can get like an outer planter and just put the nursery planter inside of the outer ceramic planter, for example, and then it'll give it a really appealing look until you can actually replant it in another planter. A lot of plants thrive in humidity, so it's important for you to give your plant a humid space wherever it's at. It just depends, but I do recommend at least one room to have a humidifier, and a lot of plants are gonna thrive even better with the humidity. So and if you can get a top fill humidifier, it's going to make everything much easier for you. And also, when you water your plants, I recommend using filtered water or distilled water. It could be like, not too cold and not too warm either. But the water that I use is, I have a shower filter, so I just like refill a container, and then it makes it a whole lot easier. But I do use filtered water for my plants. It's much healthier for their leaves as well, because sometimes if you use tap water, all the chemicals that it has and everything, it could really cause brown spots on the leaves, or like just imperfections like that. And filtered water or distilled water is much healthier for the plant as well. I noticed that a lot of plants love to be on the windowsills. They love that bright direct lighting, and yeah, so that's a spot that I recommend for all types of plants. I even keep cactuses on the windowsills and they are like thriving and love it. So, but keep in mind that if you do decide to put plants on the windowsill, they may dry quicker, like in 7 days or something like that. So you might have to be watering them once a week. It just depends on the plant, or you might have to be watering them every 10 days. Like I said, it just depends on the soil and plant type that you have. So you'd like to water your plants 1/4 cup or 1 cup of water. Usually the water comes out from the drainage holes, and like if you feed your plant 1 cup or 1/4 cup of water, but you need to keep on pouring water in your plant until water pours from the drainage holes, and then that's how you're going to know that your plant got enough water. Another neat thing about plants is that you can propagate the plants in water in like mason jars, and they have nodes, and from those nodes, if you prune it from the plant and you put them in water, they'll grow roots, and then you could put them back in the soil and you can have a whole new plant from that other plant. So you can replicate the plant that you already have. If you have plants and you have issues with pests, like like mites and all that, you can use insecticidal soap or neem oil on the soil and on the leaves, just spraying it on there. And some neem oils do make your leaves look really shiny. You can always just spray like insecticidal soap on the leaves and wash them with water. And also just mix water with the neem oil, and then water your plant when it needs watering, so that it can get rid of gnats and other mites as well. And lastly, I would recommend getting a greenhouse. It can be a tiny greenhouse or ones that are more regular size. But the one that I have is from IKEA, and it's a tiny greenhouse, and I keep quite a few plants in there that are more like 4-inch type of plants, and they really like that humidity. And it's a great place to also put plants that you're propagating in mason jars, because the humidity really helps the roots grow from the nodes of the plant when they're inside of water. Always strive to get a number of plants that like feels manageable for you, and like, yes, I can take care of all of these plants with no issues, and that you love as well. Like plants are there to uplift your space and your mood, and plants are, you're supposed to love the plants that you have. So yeah, just make sure that before you get plants that you actually have a spot for them around in your environment. And if you're wondering what these plants are in my background, then this is a Philodendron Mikins, and then we have a Monstera minima or guinea, just like trailing up on the wall there. And then that one on the shelf is a non-variegated string of hearts. And then we also have another string of hearts, Silver Glory. And if you haven't seen my plant tour, then you can. I actually posted it a while ago, and I'm actually going to be doing an updated plant tour soon, just because I've combined a lot of the plants and I have a few less plants, because usually if they're the same plant types, then you can combine the plant to make it look more bushy, and just like, yeah, it's just gonna look so much nicer. So I did that, and I have a few less plants. Remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching.